Let's take that in three parts. First is inflated market caps. Can't pay for buybacks. You need cash to do it. So your market cap can go up. So it's not the Zooms and the Pelotons that are buying back stock. They can't afford to. They don't have the cash. The second is this fiction somehow that's been created that companies in the US have been borrowing hand over fist to do buybacks. I actually pulled up debt issued and debt repaid, total debt issued and repaid for every company again in the US over the last 5 years. Collectively, US companies have not added to their total debt over the last 5 years. So the bulk of the buybacks again are not coming from companies that are loading up on debt. Are there some companies that do it? Absolutely, but you can't use anecdotal evidence as a bludgeon against an entire process. So I think that if you want to make a case against buybacks, it has to be focused. It has to be focused on those companies that shouldn't be buying back stock that are buying back stock. And from my assessment of the data, it's a small subset of companies. If you got a case against them, make it against them. But don't make it against buybacks as a process because, to be quite honest, dividends are the dysfunctional way of returning cash. Buybacks are the most sensible way because dividends are rigid. You get into a pattern of dividends, you're forced to pay it in good times and bad times. Buybacks are just flexible dividends. And when you say only a few benefit, you're talking about the people who own stock in Apple. And why is that only a few? I mean, more than half of all Americans have pension funds and invested in ETFs and index funds. I mean, why aren't they benefiting as well? So this notion that insiders are somehow cashing out on buybacks, again, is nice. It's a nice story, but it's not backed up by the facts.
But to be fair, because you're then talking about the second order impact. So if you're stimulating the economy the way that you are, you're propping up the economy, they're all benefiting from the fact that the economy was propped up. So then if they're in the position now to be able to buy back their stock because their balance sheets are requisitely strong, and I'm not taking anything against any of the tech stocks, but it has to be said that more needs to be done in order to have the equity of outcome, because you mentioned perhaps even half of the people winning, but the half that are losing aren't benefiting from anything that we've seen over the course of the last 2 years.
So tax them. I mean, the buybacks goes income to somebody, right? If you have a problem, deal with the problem the right way. It's not by stopping buybacks. So if you effectively feel that the people who can most afford it are making the money on the buybacks, tax them on their capital gains. Take the taxes and redistribute it. But this notion of using a bludgeon against companies buying back stock because you feel that this is contributing to inequality is you're attacking the wrong part of the process. So, you can have issues with what central banks have done. And I've not liked the process by which they've tried to manage the economy for the last 14 years, because I think it's unfair to savers, especially older savers who've got their money in fixed rate accounts. That's who I think has been most affected by this process. But I think if you want to attack inequality, stopping buybacks is not going to do the least. It's actually just going to preserve the status quo and keep cash in companies that shouldn't be holding on to the cash.